have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. You should go and look at the Democrats who received money from Epstein.
Oh, that's something we could take advice with. Now, here's what I say. Release the files.
You, President Trump, please stop making this political. Your behavior on this issue has been a national embarrassment.
The bill
Today is the first day of real reckoning for the Epstein class.
We have been advocates of maximum transparency, but we have also insisted that the victims be carefully protected.
Welcome, everybody, to American News Network. This is your boy, Frankie Z, and I'm over here bringing you some opinions, some editorials, and bringing you some crazy shit you've never seen before. What I find so interesting about this entire scenario is the way that this is all playing out here. So, for example, we have what's happening right now with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Donald Trump. Let's get a little listen and see what she has to say.
One of the most destructive things to MAGA. Watching this actually turn into a fight has ripped MAGA apart.
Joshua, where does the president stand tonight, politically?
Well, look, practically, he is going to sign this bill. He said as much. His team is now going to pivot to a strategy of, according to my sources, pushing the Democrats, investigating Democrats. The Stacey Plaskett incident with her texting Jeffrey Epstein during a hearing, they are going to go big on that. The concern for the White House, though, is that no matter what happens from here, no matter what is released, there is not going to be enough to satisfy the people that want that smoking gun. And they are concerned that this is not going to go away, even with the bill signing, even with more getting released.
You know, the Democrats here are trying to pin this on President Trump, but the blowback, Stacey Plaskett, Larry Summers, who said, "I'm deeply ashamed of my actions and recognize the pain they have caused. I take full responsibility for my misguided decision to continue communicating with Mr. Epstein." It goes on, but he talked to Epstein for years after the sexual things first became public. So who comes out of this worse?
It's a frag grenade that hits a bunch of people that we don't know. There are at least 36 victims of Jeffrey Epstein who he abused, that I feel for them that they're back in the center light. It will not take a dent in Donald Trump. He's got nothing to do with this. I believe him completely that this will absolutely bounce off of him. However, it is going to always tar the people who pushed it forward, including the Republicans who pushed it forward, because it's a stunt that was indifferent to the needs of the victim. It should make people angry, and it will hurt some innocent people.
It's interesting, in the House today, there was only one no vote, that from Clay Higgins, Republican of Louisiana, who said, if enacted in its current form, this type of broad reveal of criminal investigative files released to a rabid media will absolutely result in innocent people being hurt. Are you concerned, Josh, when it gets over to the Senate? Speaker Johnson implored the Senate to fix that part of it. Do you think it will just go through the way the House passed it? And could that be a real problem?
Look, I think it's politically untenable to do anything other than get it off their plate as fast as possible. But Clay Higgins is entirely right, and I think Hugh is exactly right. The unintended consequences of something like this are profound. I mean, I think this is a perfect vignette into one of the dumbest eras of American politics I've ever seen. You've got huge press conferences put together about Epstein, a guy who died several years ago for crimes committed 2 decades ago. Meanwhile, you got people worrying about health care, they're worrying about the economy, they're worrying about all this stuff, and the political class sort of celebrating this whole thing, which has absolutely nothing to do with improving the lives of the American people.
Quick thought?
I think the longer-term implication for Trump politically out of this incident, though, is this permission structure that has now been created. I think that's part of the reason the White House has been so frustrated. A permission structure because of folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene for people in the MAGA base to resist him or to vote against him.
All right, let's go to foreign policy, because Hugh, I know you love that.
Look, there are going to be a lot of Americans that are uncomfortable with the red carpet being rolled out for MBS. But this has been the Trump foreign policy doctrine. Reach out, talk to people that other leaders haven't talked to, invite them to the White House, no matter who it might offend.
Right. So, Josh, frosty relations between the United States and Saudi Arabia during the Biden administration. There was a fist bump instead of a handshake. It was all about Khashoggi. That seems to have been put behind us in terms of official U.S. foreign policy. So where do you see the relationship going forward?
Yeah, I mean, we see the results of that Biden relationship with Saudi Arabia and what happened in the 4 years that he was presiding over all. Absolute abject disaster, chaos, war in the Middle East. If you look at where the Trump administration from the first 4 years left off with the Abraham Accords, you can very clearly see a line drawn towards this visit and ultimately an expansion of an Abraham Accords where you can have a future in the Middle East that is not war-torn, that has economic incentive, not only in the region, but with the United States of America. You can see this on a number of different occasions. They're doing it a different way, and frankly, they've had success every step.
Saudi Arabia's got lots of money. MBS said that he's going to invest up to $1 billion in the United States. And here is what, sorry, that's $1 trillion.
Trillion. Yeah.
Billion, trillion, you know, it gets nebulous after a while. Brett Baer asked the Treasury Secretary about that. Listen here.
What's the timetable for investments like that? When you hear $1 trillion, what are we thinking timetable-wise?
Well, I can tell you the president's very keen for it to happen during his term, and we're already seeing a lot of it start to flow in.
Hugh, you and I come from an era when $1 billion was a lot of money.
Yeah, well, I'm looking for where that $400 billion goes. If he puts it into the leading AI companies, that will reduce the fear of the AI bubble that's out there. But it's welcome news, and the president just keeps bringing home win after win, as Scott Besson told Brett.
New relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia on the books here?
Potentially. I'm curious to see what that means for Israel. That relationship has obviously not been incredibly cozy, and how the president gets these leaders that have not traditionally gotten along to get on the same page.
Final thought, Josh?
Yeah, there's a trust relationship here. You can see that with the sale of the F-35. You know, if Saudi Arabia wasn't going to get it from us, probably get it from China. Probably creates more problems in the Middle East than it solves. This way, there is a trust relationship that they can build on. I think it's all good news from today.
Could be exciting times for the Middle East ahead. Thank you for joining us tonight, folks. Really appreciate it. Breaking right now, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, on the floor ahead of a highly anticipated vote on releasing the Epstein files. Let's listen in.
Democrats are using the Epstein tragedy, the unspeakable evils that this guy committed with his trafficking ring and all of the abuses that they made these young women go through. They're using that as a political weapon to try to distract from their failures as a party, and to try their best to try to tie President Trump somehow into this wretched scandal. The president had nothing to do with it. He's been very clear, and he has nothing to hide, and that's why he's endorsed the vote today. I suspect this vote will be probably unanimous. But here's the important point that everybody needs to understand. We have been advocates of maximum transparency, but we have also insisted that the victims be carefully protected. The Oversight Committee has been doing extraordinary work, and we've got some of the most vigorous advocates on the Republican and Democrat side on the Oversight Committee. They've been working in earnest to deliver transparency for the American people and to do it in a responsible manner. What do we mean by that? The bipartisan effort over there is already producing all the results that the discharge petition seeks and much, much more. Chairman Comer and all of these advocates over there have been releasing thousands of documents, for example, from the Epstein estate. By the way, in my view, that's been the greatest treasure trove of information because it's yielded for us Epstein's own personal flight logs, his financial records, his daily calendars, and so much more. But importantly, none of that was addressed or is addressed in the legislation that's being voted on today. The estate files wouldn't even have been encompassed in that. And so it goes to show that the Oversight Committee is doing it from the right way. From the very beginning, we've been insistent that this matter be handled carefully and with the utmost caution and care for the people who have been harmed. They should not be made to suffer any longer. We're talking about real people's lives at stake here, and young victims who don't want to be dragged into this political game that could get hurt further. But the Democrats are rushing the release of thousands of unsubstantiated documents that may be included in this, that are going to be in the public domain with the passage of this bill. And there are serious deficiencies in the legislation that I have noted at length, and Republicans have to work to address those deficiencies in the Senate if and when this legislation is advanced. I stood before the American public today at our press conference, and I explained in detail the dangers of the discharge petition. We have posted at my website, speaker.gov, a summary. The legal counsel, a small army of lawyers, put this together. I used to be a federal court litigator. Many of my colleagues who have spoken today were. We understand the dangers of how this was haphazardly drawn up. And among them, by the way, Mr. Speaker, before I forget, I seek unanimous consent to enter into this document into the record. It's on the website. It's entitled, how the flaws of H.R. 4405 could re-victimize Epstein's victims, create new victims, and damage the judicial system. It is dated today. Thank you. And it summarizes just 5 or 6 of the major concerns. Among them, it fails to fully protect victim privacy. It could create new categories of victims. It potentially jeopardizes grand jury secrecy. It fails to prohibit release of child sexual abuse materials that are not appropriately defined in the legislation. It jeopardizes future federal investigations, and we have national security concerns regarding classified information. We'll put this in the record because we need the legislative record to reflect what is the legislative intent behind this vote. I used to litigate cases. We would litigate federal statutes and whether or not they could survive, and legislative intent is important. And we need to say clearly for the record, as a Speaker of the House, I'm saying to you, this legislation that will pass today is flawed and it must be amended. The question is, why didn't we amend it here before we passed it? Because the authors won't allow it. Because under the rules of the House, under a discharge petition, they have to agree to consent for the legislation to be amended, and they're not doing that. So now we rely upon our partners in the other chamber to get that done, and they need to do that. The victims deserve our utmost respect. In fact, they should be saluted for their courage. And the young women who have not come forward, who are now, some of them are middle-aged women who have not come forward, also deserve our respect, and they deserve to be protected. Republicans support transparency. We want maximum transparency, especially when it comes to disclosing the names of anybody who had anything to do with these evils, anybody who conspired with or aided in any way Jeffrey Epstein. They must be brought to justice. We want the bill to be amended so it doesn't, at the same time, violate victim privacy, create new victims, disclose the names of any whistleblower or informant, cause the release of grand jury materials or child sexual abuse materials, or undermine our national security. And if and when the Senate takes this up, we will work with our colleagues over there to make sure that these things are corrected. I'll just close with this simple thought. We've been at this a while. It's drug on for a while, but it's time for this to come to light. I expect that this will be a unanimous vote, and it will reflect what I think every member in this chamber, and I'll say this now, at least in recent days, every member of the chamber on the Democrat side, they didn't say anything for 4 years, but they're for maximum transparency now, and so is this side. But we want to do it in a respectful and careful manner so that we don't subject innocent people to further harm. And that has been the whole thing. I told all my members today I'll be voting yes on this, and I suspect almost everyone will. We'll send it to the Senate, and we hope it's corrected. Thank you for the time, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Mr. President, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
You know, it's not the question that I mind, it's your attitude. I think you are a terrible reporter. It's the way you ask these questions. You start off with a man who's highly respected, asking him a horrible, insubordinate, and just a terrible question. And you could even ask that same exact question nicely. You're all psyched up. Somebody psychs you over at ABC. They're going to psych. You're a terrible person and a terrible reporter. As far as the Epstein files is, I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert. But I guess I turned out to be right. But you know who does have? Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, who ran Harvard, was with him every single night, every single weekend. They lived together. They went to his island many times. I never did. Andrew Weissman, I hear. All these guys were friends of his. You don't even talk about those people. You just keep going on the Epstein files. And what the Epstein is a Democrat hoax to try and get me not to be able to talk about the $21 trillion that I talked about today. It's a hoax. Now, I just got a little report, and I put it in my pocket, of all the money that he's given to Democrats. He gave me none, zero, no money to me. But he gave money to Democrats. And people are wise to your hoax. And ABC's, your company, your crappy company, is one of the perpetrators. And I'll tell you something.
So why not just sign it now?
I think the license should be taken away from ABC because your news is so fake and it's so wrong. And we have a great commissioner, the chairman, who should look at that, because I think when you come in and when you're 97% negative to Trump, and then Trump wins the election in a landslide, that means obviously your news is not credible, and you're not credible as a reporter. So I've answered your question. You should go and look at the Democrats who received money from Epstein, who spent their time. Larry Summers was with him all the time. That creep, the fund guy, was with him all the time. What's his name? Reid Hoffman. Who? Reid Hoffman. I don't know Reid Hoffman, but I know he spends a lot of money on the radical left. Reid Hoffman, in my opinion, should be under investigation. He's a sleazebag. And those are the people, but they don't get any press, they don't get any news, and you're not after the radical left because you're a radical left network. But I think the way you ask a question with the anger and the meanness is terrible. You ought to go back and learn how to be a reporter. No more questions from you.
Legislation forcing the Justice Department to publicly release its files on the late financier and convicted sexual abuser Jeffrey Epstein could be on President Trump's desk very soon. The House passed the measure this morning, and a short time ago, the Senate agreed to approve it by unanimous consent. Senior national correspondent Aisha Husni has the details. She's on Capitol Hill for us. Good evening, Aisha.
John, good evening to you. And it was Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer who asked for unanimous consent, which fast tracks everything, doesn't require a vote, and no senator objected, which means that the Senate has now synced up with the House. And so as soon as the House releases this bill text, the president will then sign it. John? Excuse me.
Tonight, the House passed a bill 427-1, compelling the Justice Department to release all files related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Republican Congressman Clay Higgins, the only no vote, claiming on X that the bill's broad reveal of criminal investigative files released to a rabid media will absolutely result in innocent people being hurt.
It risks re-victimizing those who were trafficked and exploited.
But the bill's authors disagree.
Justice delayed is justice denied. It could be just another delay tactic.
Is that what you think? That's the motivation from the Speaker?
I think the Speaker wants to save face.
The fight over the Epstein files runs far deeper. Many Republicans claim Democrats are politicizing this investigation to harm President Trump, and they wonder why now.
To those who say that Biden should have released these files, let me just address that right now. You're right. He should have. He's not the president right now. Donald Trump is.
Republicans also say it's Democrats who are connected to Epstein, like Larry Summers, the former Clinton Treasury Secretary and former Harvard president, announcing this week he's stepping back from public life after emails and text messages revealed Summers, a married man, was seeking advice from Epstein on how to pursue someone he described as a female mentee. It happened between 2018 and 2019, 10 years after Epstein first pled guilty to soliciting a minor. Congress may not be united on the Epstein bill today, but dozens of survivors are. The brother of Virginia Roberts Giuffre in tears.
Well, Sissy, you didn't just make a small dent. You made a monumental impact.
And John, in 2 days' time, the House will take a vote on whether or not to censure Delegate Stacey Plaskett and remove her from the Intel Committee over text messages that she was exchanging with Jeffrey Epstein during a congressional hearing where he was feeding her information that she was using in questioning. John?
Yes, that one was really an eye-opener. And Aisha, a federal judge handed Republicans and President Trump a big blow to their efforts to keep the House next year. What's that all about?
Yeah, this came down from a three-judge panel in Texas, and they basically ruled that Republicans there cannot use those newly redrawn maps in next year's midterm elections. The U.S. District Judge Jeffrey Brown, who actually was nominated by President Trump, authored this decision and said that the new maps would harm Black and Hispanic voters. And as you know, John, the Texas redrawing set off a nationwide redistricting battle, with California passing a ballot measure to give Democrats more seats. So this may actually take some pressure off other states like Indiana that were perhaps next in line to redraw their maps. John?
And we'll find out if it doesn't work in Texas, maybe it doesn't work in California either. More to come on that. Aisha, thank you.
You got it.
My next guest has been pushing for answers on the Clintons, pointing out on X, Bill and Hillary Clinton are refusing to appear before House oversight for their depositions regarding Jeffrey Epstein. Notice how House Democrats suddenly have nothing to say about it. Joining me now, Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. Congresswoman, thank you for being with us here today. Let's talk about Bill Clinton. For all the talk regarding Jeffrey Epstein, so much of it in many corners focuses on President Trump. But it's not President Trump who had a painting in Jeffrey Epstein's house wearing a dress and high heels. It's not President Trump who'd been to the island. It's not President Trump who's littered throughout the emails by others talking about, hey, Jeff, I saw your boy at Davos. Why are we not talking about Bill Clinton?
Well, I think it's important to note that even from the beginning of my task force in January of this year, I was really pushing to figure out what the deal was with these documents. And in around February timeframe, I was made aware by a whistleblower, of which I have since reported this to the FBI. And it was actually the only outlet in the country that would report on our findings was Fox News. We had actually reported that we were made aware of a whistleblower that under the former deputy director of the FBI, so under Biden's FBI, there was destruction of evidence specifically pertaining to Jeffrey Epstein and potential evidence tampering. I think that that's pretty important to note because I went public with this and not one member of Congress, really for the most part, a majority of Republicans weren't even tracking that. But for those that were trying to use this to smear the president, notice how they never made a mention of that. As we continued in our investigations, I've gone to every potential meeting with these victims. I sat in the same room where the victims exonerated President Trump and said that they simply want access to their files that they had requested from the DOJ under Biden and were denied access to. I can tell you that this administration has released over 50,000 files. Remember, Democrats tried to selectively pick and choose emails to, again, try to smear the president. Notice how they didn't put the Jeffrey Epstein email in there that talked about how much he hated the president. And you even had one of their own actively engaging in communication with this pedophile, not to try to get justice for the victims or justice for the children, but to try to smear the president. And so I've said this from the get-go, the president hasn't changed his position. Any single person in the country, if you were being accused of being a convicted sex trafficker and pedophile, you would obviously be upset too. The president has pushed for transparency. I have frankly had many members conversations about this, and I think what we're mostly disgusted about is that this entire time, it does seem that this has been only used to smear the president. Now, he actually said the other day, go ahead and release the files. I think it was on Friday he started saying that. He reiterated the Truth Social statement, but ultimately at the end of the day, I don't want people to get distracted from the facts here, and the facts is that Jeffrey Epstein was a bad person. We obviously have been made aware, Congress has as a whole, you guys did the article yourselves on it, that there was potential destruction of evidence and evidence tampering. Now, I ask you, why under a former administration that's Democrat-run that was already targeting the president, why would you ever want to destroy evidence? Why would you ever want to tamper with evidence? And this is publicly known to be happening at the FBI during the transition. So that's a huge problem and signifies a bigger issue here.
Yeah, if that evidence implicated President Trump. However, if that evidence implicated other sympathetic figures to the previous administration, I think we have the answer to your question. Quickly, because I want to cover one other thing with you here today, Congresswoman, but perhaps you're most well suited to answer the question that I asked yesterday. Why? Why did so many high-profile figures continue to consort with Jeffrey Epstein after his 2008 conviction for soliciting an underage minor? Why, from every academic walk of life, from finance to politics to entertainment, did so many people turn to Jeffrey Epstein to ask him questions about their life, their business, to be his friend?
Jeffrey Epstein was a master manipulator. We've heard this not just from the victims, but it's very evident in how he handled and manipulated politicians as well as world leaders. I believe that his immense wealth lured people in, kind of how a bug is lured to a bug zapper. And ultimately, I do believe that there's an aspect to Jeffrey Epstein that involves foreign intelligence. But make no mistake, if it was American intelligence, we would have had some form of file on him that existed at the CIA. And to my knowledge, that doesn't exist. The fact is that Jeffrey Epstein was running an operation where he was collecting information on people, which is why they try to smear the president. But we know that Mr. President is clean, and he's the most investigated man in U.S. history. And definitely, I'm frankly glad that those emails came out because it proved exactly what we've been saying the whole time.
So to be clear, there's a lot of wealthy financiers from New York. There's a lot of people connected politically. Very few of them seem to have the deep relationship he had in all walks of life. Your answer to me as to why suggests the distinguishing factor with Jeffrey Epstein from your other politically connected wealthy individuals is that you believe he's also connected to foreign intelligence, that he was using that as an operation to compromise individuals in the United States.
Yes.
What specifically, who's he work for, Jeffrey Epstein?
I had asked the victim attorney representation directly in front of all of House Oversight and the Speaker of the House if, to their knowledge, he had information or if he was involved with a foreign government. And they said that he was actively in communication at the time while he was under arrest with the former director of the CIA, so different administration, not Trump's administration, but different administration, and that they had heard / had potentially knowledge that he was involved with Israel, Iran, and Russia.
And directly communicating with them while he was under arrest,
correct.
You said?
That he had communications with foreign intelligence, correct? That he was directly communicating via his bodyguard through notes with the former director of the CIA. And this is, mind you, not during the Trump administration, but when he was first on house arrest. So I believe it was actually under the Bush CIA director.
And to be clear, Congresswoman, you're getting this information from where?
From the victims' attorneys. And they actually told all of this to House Oversight. So Democrats, Republicans, and the Speaker of the House.
So from victims' attorneys that Jeffrey Epstein is connected in the manner that you're talking about to foreign intelligence services.
Correct.
Okay, and just to be clear, because you've significantly piqued my curiosity here, how would the victims' attorneys have access to that information of Jeffrey Epstein's foreign intelligence connections?
I actually had asked them where their main source was, and one of them was from his bodyguard, who, to my knowledge, is still alive today. Also, the victims did see a lot of information, but at the time when I answered this, or when I asked this question in front of everyone, it was the attorney answering, not the victims directly. So,
and Congresswoman, what's the name of that bodyguard?
I don't have I have it written down in my notes, but I don't have the name off the top of my head. But he's, to my knowledge, still alive, because I actually asked that question for follow-up on the investigation.
Yeah, that'd be a great source to follow up with then for this information. Well, I appreciate the candid nature of this conversation. It's obviously worthy of a much deeper discussion, and I think that this is a part of the story that deserves investigation. Before you go today, I did want to ask you about something else that I saw from some of your colleagues in the House. It's pretty fascinating, but this is a group of Democrat politicians, all of whom I believe served either in the military or in an intelligence service, and they just put out this video earlier today.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution.
We know this is hard and that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
the Army,
or Navy,
the Air Force,
your vigilance is critical.
And know that we have your back.
Because now, more than ever,
the American people need you. We need you to stand up for our laws,
our Constitution,
and who we are as Americans. Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up the ship.
It's Alyssa Slotkin, Jason Crow, Mark Kelly, many others, really encouraging the military to refuse orders.
I mean, I'm surprised they didn't ask me to be in the video. I'm a vet. I obviously don't think the military should, get behind illegal orders. But the fact is that this military isn't being ordered to do anything illegal. So obviously partisan in nature. I would argue, why didn't they do a video calling out at the same time General Milley for when he hopped on a call with China to tell him, this, that, and the other pertaining to President Trump's agenda? The fact is that this whole objective of the Democrats in both the House and the Senate is to obstruct, to draw attention away from their failures. And I look forward to what President Trump has planned specifically on health care.
It feels a little insurrection-y, I think one might point out as well. Feels a little insurrection-y. So. All right, Congresswoman Luna, thank you so much for your time today. I hope to talk again soon and follow up on some of those questions.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So let's bring in our colleague, Brett Baer, anchor a special report. Brett, good morning to you.
Good morning.
First, have a gander yesterday. Here's the president talking about Epstein being exclusively a Democratic problem. Here he is on that.
I'm for I don't, they can do whatever they want. We'll give them everything. Sure, I would. Let the Senate look at it. Let anybody look at it. But don't talk about it too much, because honestly, I don't want to take it away from us. It's really a Democrat problem. The Democrats were Epstein's friends, all of them. And it's a hoax.
Okay, so let's see which way this goes. We do not know the fallout yet. I think we can say that. But based on Aisha's reporting there, the fallout is already beginning, Brett.
Yeah, I think so. By the way, I'm partial to the pink frog protester up there. I hadn't seen him before, but listen,
I think
that
big
this
moment.
is...
Brett Baer coming in with his take on this thing. This is so crazy to me. So here's what I'm going to share with you right now. These guys are going to see how badly this backfires on them. Everybody that's pushing to get this thing released doesn't realize what's going to happen next. And oh boy, do I think there's going to be some trouble ahead for some people.
Because it is a turnaround from where the president was and how he talked about it and what the instructions essentially were, how House Speaker Johnson was dealing with it. You're now going to see the floodgates open because a lot of people wanted to vote for this. And now that the president has opened that up, I think the vote is not in question at all, and they'll probably get a ton of votes. Now, where does it go? How long does it take? Do we see the documents? How much is out and how much is not out? And I don't think we have a sense of that from the DOJ. Remember, thousands and thousands of pages have been put out already. And what we're seeing so far, you're right, cuts both ways as far as embarrassment and also, even worse when it comes to the victims.
Hey, this is it. This is where it all starts to come to a climax here. This is the week. So stay tuned to American News Network. We're going to be bringing you the top news. We're going to let you know what's happening here. But more importantly is, these Democrats have dug a hole for themselves. Watch what happens to them. Mark my words. Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to the channel. Give us a like. That's all we care about. And we'll talk to you soon. Peace.